right. Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are joining us from. Thank you for being here. I'd like to welcome you to the co-hosted webinar between the Foundation for Food and Agriculture Research, or FAR, and the Swine Health Information Center, or SHIC. This is a program to address Japanese encephalitis virus, or JEV, and we're going to be telling you a little bit more about how this program came about. But first, I'm going to walk through some housekeeping. We ask that you please remain muted during the presentation. If you have any questions, there is going to be a Q&A section at the end of the webinar. We invite you to submit questions using the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. You're welcome to submit questions at any point during the webinar, and we will be reading those aloud and answering your questions at the end of the webinar. It is being recorded, as you were alerted when you joined, and that recording is going to be distributed after the webinar is concluded. The recording will also live on both FAR and SHIC's web pages as well, so you'll be able to find it there as well. We're also inviting you to introduce yourself in the chat below, so separate from the Q&A box. As this program is encouraging collaboration, we want you to have the opportunity, should you wish, to connect with other attendees. So an example of what an introduction might look like is below. So your name, your contact information, your research priority area that you're looking to work on, and then the collaboration need. And my colleague is going to be dropping an example into the chat box so you can see what that looks like. And we encourage you to do the same should you be interested in doing so. So before we get started, I have our agenda of what we're hoping to accomplish in this 1-hour webinar. We already covered the housekeeping. We're going to then move on to brief introductions of our two organizations, introduce the program, including the overview and the threat to U.S. swine, details on how to apply and any other criteria that you may need to consider. And then lastly, the Q&A at the very end. Again, please submit your questions using the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. I'd like to begin introductions. My name is Lauren Hershey. I am the Director of Strategic Partnerships at the Foundation for Food and Agriculture Research.
And hello, my name is Jasmine Bruno, and I'm a Scientific Program Director at the Foundation for Food and Agriculture Research, or FAR, and I lead the Animal Systems Research portfolio.
Hi, I'm Michelle Olgers. I'm a Communications Officer at FAR, and I will be handling your questions and answers in the Q&A box. So please don't forget to put them in there, and when we're done, I will be reading them aloud so they can be answered. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Megan Niederwarder, the Executive Director of the Swine Health Information Center.
Good afternoon. I'm Lisa Beckton, and I'm the Associate Director of the Swine Health Information Center.
Hey all, so a bit about FAR first. So FAR was established in the 2014 Farm Bill with a mission to build unique partnerships to support innovative science addressing today's food and agriculture challenges, really with the ultimate vision of a world in which ever-innovating and collaborative science provides every person access to affordable, nutritious food on thriving farms. So a little bit about how we do that. We support research, and we support research that complements USDA's research agenda, really looking to build public-private partnerships so we can extend the federal investment that was made, and then filling critical research gaps like the JEV work that we're introducing here today, and then focusing on actionable science that will help drive the change that we aim to see in the system. To date, FAR has awarded and matched $625 million worth of funding with over 550 distinct funding partners. And we're looking forward to continue our work of supporting thriving production systems, vibrant agroecosystems, and healthy food systems. And so now I will pass it over to my partners at SHIC.
The Swine Health Information Center was launched in 2015 with pork checkoff funding after the introduction of porcine epidemic diarrhea virus. And the mission of the Swine Health Information Center is to protect and enhance the health of the U.S. swine herd by minimizing the impact of emerging disease threats through preparedness, coordinated communications, global disease monitoring, analysis of swine health data, and then taking that analysis and really targeting research investments, again, to minimize the impact of any emerging disease threat. Next slide. So coming together for the JEV research program, the Swine Health Information Center has partnered with the Foundation for Food and Agriculture Research really to leverage our funds and enable a program that has increased breadth of research priorities. So we have come together at a one-to-one match for a total of $1 million US dollars for this program. Really thinking about the US being negative for JEV, as you can see the JEV risk areas in the figure on the slide, we really want the goal of this program to be to develop novel tools, technologies, enabling the US to prevent introduction of JEV, also enable us to prepare for a potential incursion, develop a response strategy, and of course, develop tools to reduce the impact or mitigate the production losses should JEV be introduced. We anticipate that the research awards made through this program will be completed and announced late spring 2024. So Japanese encephalitis virus is a zoonotic transboundary disease that's maintained in a natural cycle between Culex mosquitoes and water birds, such as herons and egrets. Oftentimes, when this virus is outside of the natural cycle, we can think about this as a spillover and causing infection in humans, horses, and pigs. It was identified as an emerging swine health threat through the global disease monitoring programs that the Swine Health Information Center has in place. In 2022, an outbreak of JEV genotype 4 spread rapidly to new areas and regions in Australia, impacting more than 80 Australian piggeries and causing significant production losses, including reproductive failure in sow farms, such as delayed farrowing, increased numbers of stillbirths, mummified fetuses, abortions, and weak piglets that had Shaker syndrome. Additionally, it causes infertility in breeding boars. Next slide. As the US is currently negative for JEV, an introduction of the virus could result in significant clinical disease in humans and also significant production losses for US pork producers. We think about the US as a geographic region that's at risk for JEV introduction because we have available competent insect vectors. We also have susceptible avian and porcine hosts, including feral swine. And we also have environmental conditions that are similar to those conditions in JEV endemic countries, such as in Southeast Asia and, of course, Australia. As there is no treatment or vaccine currently approved for protection of pigs against JEV, either in Australia or in the US, we're really focusing efforts again on identifying new tools and preventing introduction. These critical research investments are really necessary to prevent JEV incursion in the US, ensure rapid detection of JEV if there is an incursion, inform stakeholder response, including the producer and animal caretaker response, developing tools for rapid implementation of control and mitigation efforts, such as those that would reduce the production impacts on sow farms, and also provide clear messaging to consumers on the safety of pork consumption if JEV is introduced. Next slide. With significant stakeholder feedback and solicitation of ideas, the Foundation for Food and Agriculture Research and the Swine Health Information Center have developed 13 research priorities that are specific to this research program. These research priorities are described in detail in the RFP document, and I'd encourage you to review those 13 research priorities there. But as you can see, these 13 research priorities identified here with some major headings include transmission and epidemiology of the virus, including the potential for pig-to-pig transmission, developing mosquito control strategies for U.S. hog farms, looking at diagnostics, both genome-based as well as antibody-based, developing effective communication strategies for producers and consumers, looking at a surveillance plan and identifying surveillance targets, evaluating compatible cases that would be submitted to the VDLs in the U.S., developing challenge models to investigate interventions and their impacts on disease, identifying novel vaccine strategies, and also understanding how much cross-protection is provided from other flaviviruses that are in the U.S. We also have goals to identify the competent vectors in the U.S., understand the potential role of wildlife, as well as look at novel hosts that could support viral replication in the U.S. And finally, additionally, looking at viral sequencing to understand molecular pathogenesis. Next slide. And at this time, I'll pass it over to my colleague, Dr. Lisa Becton with the Swine Health Information Center.
Lisa, you're on mute.
Never fails. Sorry about that. Okay, start over again. What I'm going to cover is really the mechanics and content requirements for submission of a proposal. And we're covering this because the SHIC template is a little bit different from folks that maybe have submitted to FAR before. And so we wanted to go over some of those differences and some of the things that we're requiring for proposals to be submitted under this program. And so first and foremost, it really is important to address a minimum of one, but more if needed, of the research priorities. This is really important. Dr. Niederwerder just reviewed those, and that is pivotal to the whole program and understanding and receiving information on those gaps. The project duration is listed as 12 to 18 months. However, sometimes there's a compelling need to have time beyond that. And if it is required, we do require there is justification within the body of the proposal stating why that extended time frame is being requested. For the budget amounts, the amount total is $250,000, and that is the funds coming from the FAR and SHIC match. We do encourage matching funds from other entities and organizations, but they're not necessarily required. And if you do have those matching funds, there is a section and component within the budget template that can show what those matching contributions are. For awardee details, who can apply? Really, we're looking at collaborations across the industries, international organizations, pork industry, our allied industries, academic institutions, and other private and public partnerships. And so we've had several questions already about international collaborations. And as we know right now, they are highly encouraged because obviously we do not have this in the US. And so we are looking for a wide range of collaborators and investigators to apply. But again, keep in mind, as was stated before, we are looking at what are the benefits of this research for US producers. And obviously that may help all producers, but really focusing on the US. And as again mentioned before, we anticipate the award date to let people know of grants will be in the late spring. Next slide, please. So now on to the template format. We do have the template link on the slides, and that is also within the RFP on the SHIC website at swinehealth.org/research. And so some of the mechanics that we're looking for, we request for the template that the body of the proposal is 5 total pages, typed as single space 12-point New Times Roman font, because that standardizes our ability to look at all the proposals, and it's just a neat format that we are requesting. Within the next two sections really are the main body of the proposals that we're looking at. So the first part is the introduction and objectives. We would like to have a brief introduction in the proposal that includes the project rationale, what priority is being addressed, and then a brief listing of what the objectives are to cover the project, and then a final explanation of the questions or the hypothesis that's being answered. The second component is the research design to reach the objectives. This one is really the meat of the proposal, because our request is to have it clearly and comprehensively stated what are the details of the experimental design and methodology to accomplish that. This includes procedures to address the proposal objectives, including reference assays or tests that are being utilized, other procedures or sampling types, and including statistical tests that are going to be employed for data analysis at the completion of the project. As I said before, this section really is critical, not only for the proposal and to understand what is being researched, but for our working groups for scientific merit. They need to be able to understand what the project objectives are in a relatively science-based but easy for producers to understand as well, and also have those folks and reviewers being able to draw conclusions from the data and what the project is trying to reach. The last one, it's a little bit different, but we do want to have a description of the quality assurance and quality control plans that are incorporated into the proposal. And what we mean by this is, what are the investigators doing to ensure that the project is completed in a standardized, consistent, repeatable, and accurate format. And so this may include description of what assays they're being used and what is being done to standardize that testing or collaboration with another entity to run those tests, how staff or personnel may be trained if sample collection is required, and other things of that nature. Again, the goal is to ensure that we have the most scientifically accurate and consistent project available. Next slide, please. So some other, yep, there you go. So the other ones, in the schedule and timeline, we don't have verbiage for that, but what we're really looking for is, if at all possible, to have the proposal lined out by what are the key activities and milestones that are going to occur over the time and length of the proposal. And several proposals I've seen in the past have utilized a Gantt chart to signify key milestones by month. And that is really important too if it's going further than 12 months or 18 months or even longer. So that it helps provide an idea of what are the activities over time. The next part, the certificate section, really applies to universities and organizations that manage the contracts and approval of the proposals being submitted. There is a section on the cover page, the main cover page, that includes areas to fill of the name, the title, email address, phone number of the grants office, the college or department who have approved the proposal. This is critical for us as well as for awardees, because that is who we will be reaching out to start the approval or start the process for contracts once awards have been granted. The next section, budget, is another one I know a lot of people really look at. We do incorporate a specific template that outlines individual costs that could occur for the project, up to including travel and publication of documents. But one of the things I do want to stress, overhead and indirect costs are typically not covered by the Swine Health Information Center research funds. And that may be different from what other policies have been from FAR. We do cover graduate student support as well as student hourly labor and other postdoctoral support. And so that is included in our expectations for funding. When we look at principal investigators, if they're on a less than a 12-month salaried appointment, we do allow funding requests commensurate with the time being spent on the proposal, and also not covered on existing salary. And so that is incorporated too. The other thing sometimes that is asked is, how about equipment? If someone does not have a piece of testing equipment or other more solid equipment that they're utilizing or new equipment, typically we do not cover those funds unless it's pre-explained in the proposal or even approved in advance by SHIC. And so if it is requested or something over and above normal operating procedures is needed, that would also have to have justification within the budget section. And then lastly is the letters of cooperation. These are the cooperators and letters that people have agreed to work on the project or be co-PIs and investigators. Those are in addition to the 5-page body of the proposal, the cover page, and the budget page. So those letters of cooperation would not be considered to be within the body of the proposal, more as an attachment. So next slide, please. So this section is a little bit different. When we were discussing how to describe our review process, we wanted to give people an idea of what our review groups look at, but also this is not all including. So we just wanted to provide, though, an understanding of what are the high salient points that are looked at within the value or within the proposal. And so the big one, obviously, since we're a producer-funded organization, is what is the value to the pork industry? Does the budget innovatively address one of the 13 priorities? Does the proposal describe the impact and relevance to U.S. pork production? And what is the outcome and how will that matter? Our experimental design review, does the proposal clearly outline the aims and objectives? Is this something that can be easily described to producers and veterinarians alike? Does the proposal include appropriately thorough, tractable, or time-bound and feasible methodology? Has the PI assembled a qualified research team with access to cutting-edge technologies in the field and also laboratory facilities? One of those is a chance of success. Can the project realistically obtain the objectives and reach the outcome? Is the budget reasonable and justified? And then lastly, is the timeline present a tractable timeline? Is this something that can be accomplished within the stated timeline, or is it either under or over explained? And so those are just a very brief glimpse of some of the key questions and review points that are assessed for each and every proposal. So next slide, please. Okay, so let's see the other points. So submission guidelines, this opened up in February 2024 of this year, February 12th. And so all of the applications are to be submitted at the research@swinehealth.org. And that is our specific research location that will collate and collect all of our information. The deadline is April 15th of 2024 at 5 p.m. Central Daylight Time, which is Eastern, or 6 p.m. Eastern for those of you in the States. And I apologize if there's folks internationally, I'm not good with that conversion. But 5 p.m. Central Standard Time in the US. And then there's additional parts for newsletters to stay up to date, and also to highlight for SHIC, we do have an additional RFP open. It's our wean to harvest opportunity that, again, is really focused on some of the significant needs for our pork producers, specifically in biosecurity and management of diseases and disease transmission. So next slide. I'll turn it to Jasmine.
So we do have a question already, came in the chat. Not clear where to attach the CV or bio sketch to demonstrate expertise of the PI and co-PIs. Please suggest.
Yes, investigators are welcome to include a 2 to 3 page bio sketch. The recommendation is to include that bio sketch at the end of the proposal. And really importantly for submission is to submit an entire Word file that has the proposal template. And then if you'd like to, again, append at the end a bio sketch, that's perfectly acceptable, and it can be included in the overall proposal submission.
Can someone address if a PI can submit multiple proposals?
Yes, absolutely. They multiple proposals from the same PI, or if you are a PI on one proposal and a co-PI on another proposal, absolutely. We encourage as many proposals as you'd like to submit. Again, really our goals here are to have really a great breadth of the projects that we fund through this program. And so, yes, absolutely.
Thank you for those questions so far. And we just want to encourage that if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and we will restate them and answer them here.
Okay, please elucidate your interest in 1, immunization of feral swine, and 2, alternative vaccine delivery methods, for example, oral.
I can take that. Feel free to chime in too, anybody who on the panel. With regards to U.S. pork producers, we of course want to think about how we minimize the impact to commercial swines for pork production. However, of course, as we all know, if we can prevent the maintenance of a disease in feral swine in the US, it also reduces the risk to commercial swine. So that could be a consideration. As part of our proposal priorities, research priorities, certainly vaccine development is a priority for the U.S. industry and for any country in preparedness for JEV. Because there is not a currently approved JEV vaccine, then that's absolutely one of the priorities, to develop a vaccine strategy that again would protect and mitigate the production losses on swine farms.
Thank you. How would you like consortium applications to be indicated?
There is a section on the cover page that would list if there's one PI that's involved, and then co-PIs as far as different consortiums. And it can be listed in the body of the proposal in the introduction that this is a consortium. And if there's different expenses, that can be accounted for within the budget page. But typically we'll have one point person as the PI or the primary contact, but then additional collaborators can be listed all within that front cover page.
I
forgot, yeah, one more piece to that. It is important to, within the proposal, the body of the proposal, if there are multiple collaborators, to describe what their roles are within the proposal and how each one is filling into the completion of the objectives.
Can diagnostic assay include other viruses such as West Nile in addition to JEV?
With that, I mean, that might be relevant as far as trying to detect or determine which one is which, because sometimes there may be cross-reactivity. As far as a primary detection of West Nile, that probably would not necessarily fit within the proposal, but if it is utilized in trying to rule out other viruses, I think that would be appropriate. And anybody else jump in?
Is US-based collaborator necessary for submission?
No. So for international applications, certainly there can be an international PI organization. The biggest thing with regards to international proposal submissions is that it's very important to demonstrate that the research that will be conducted and performed provides value to U.S. pork producers and the U.S. swine industry. So having a collaboration in the U.S. is certainly encouraged, not required, but certainly a requirement is to show value and knowledge that will help the U.S. industry.
Are there any limitations to sending funds to an international institution?
At this point, we have not had issues with that. I know, obviously the funds would be considered in US dollars. But Megan, you might explain further, but I don't think there's any issue.
Yeah, if the award of course, will go to the primary institution of the PI, the principal investigator. And if there are collaborations, you can include in the budget a subcontract if there are needs for subcontract awards to other institutions. Include that in the budget and as a recommendation for making that very clear and describing that in the budget justification. So we have a one-page budget that has all of the line items that you can have for the inclusion in the budget, but there's also a section at the very bottom that says explanation as required. In those cases where you have a subcontract or budget line items that maybe aren't straightforward, I would encourage anyone to include a detailed budget justification so that those questions are answered up front in the proposal submission.
We had a question about a journal question, but it is not appearing now in the Q&A box because I think we were following up with another question.
I can see it, Michelle. So it says journal articles used to support the proposal. I've asked for clarification, but we're assuming, do you mean how would you cite and reference journal articles to support your claims in the proposals? And Megan and Lisa, I'll volley that off to you.
Yes, you can include a reference list in the proposal. It does not count towards the 5-page limit. And I would recommend that you include a reference list, and again, include that after the body of the proposal so that you have the cover page, the 5 pages that is the body of the proposal, the budget page with explanation, and then you can include the reference list or as an additional applicant just asked of the biosketch.
Michelle, I think there was one more question that was posed in the chat. Do you see that one?
And actually, while you're looking for that, there was also a question that says, do those references count towards the 5-page limit?
Yeah, no, those references would not. The body of the proposal would be the 5 pages for that, but the reference, just like Megan had stated, would be at the end of those 5 pages and attached within the Word document, but would not include as far as the page count for the proposal itself.
I'm scanning the chat now to see if there are any questions that came in there.
The one about a document describing the facilities and the equipment, did we already ask that?
No.
Okay.
Somebody had asked, can I attach the document describing the facilities and equipment to the proposal?
That now, to me, that would be incorporated within the design of the proposal and would be considered part of the body of the proposal, unless there's an overarching need to describe it, but that should be included within the design section or even in the introduction section of the body of the proposal.
Did we address if we can attach the documents describing the facilities, equipment, and others related to the proposal?
Yes.
Then I am not seeing any more questions.
Last call.
Megan, do you want to share how people can follow up if they do have additional questions?
Sure, yes. So feel free to reach out to any of us on this panel. Of course, if you have any questions, we are happy to provide any additional information. We are very excited about the interest in this program. We are excited for the opportunity to provide value back to U.S. pork producers through JEB research, and are happy to help any questions on the proposal submission or review. The shick@swinehealth.org email is the best email to reach out for Lisa or myself for the Swine Health Information Center. And again, we will be posting this webinar on both the SHIC website as well as the FAR website to serve as a resource, continued resource for those interested in the program. And again, feel free to reach out to any of us with questions or clarification needs.
And in addition, all registrants will get the webinar recording by email following this event. So, and I would like to echo Megan, Lisa. We look forward to seeing your research applications to support JEV preparedness and response efforts. So thank you all for coming to this webinar, and feel free to reach out if you have more questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.